that. And never become a minivan mom.
Hey, Chris.
As parents, we say never a lot, but never happens. So when you say you'd never leave your child in a hot car, know it can happen. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
Good morning, I'm Bree Driscoll, and here's your Spectrum News in 90. President Donald Trump is expected to sign an executive order to begin the process of dismantling the Department of Education today. Shutting down the department entirely would require an act of Congress. The president will direct the department's secretary to take the steps needed to, quote, return education authority to the states. Israeli forces launch a limited ground operation to retake a key corridor separating northern and southern Gaza. The attacks killing dozens, according to local hospitals. Israel's defense minister warns attacks would intensify until Hamas frees dozens of hostages and gives up control of the territory. President Trump speaks to Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky for the first time since their tumultuous meeting at the White House nearly 3 weeks ago. According to Trump, they mostly spoke about the talk he had with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. Ukraine and Russia successfully carried out a prisoner swap agreed upon in a limited ceasefire deal. And March Madness officially begins today with the round of 64. 16 games will be played across Wichita, Kansas, Lexington, Kentucky, Denver, Colorado, and Providence, Rhode Island. And there will be another 16 games tomorrow. Teams battle for a chance to play in the national championship game on April 7th. And that's your Spectrum News in 90.
Good Thursday morning, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your weather on the One's forecast. It's the first day of spring in the northern hemisphere. Not really feeling like it across many in the lower 48. We're much cooler on the backside of yesterday's storm system in the central U.S. Expecting a good deal of sunshine, but our temperatures will continue to stay mild along the eastern half of the United States, with highs running a few degrees above the average. But that all changes as we get towards the end of the week into the weekend. We'll talk about it coming up in 10 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bree Driscoll, and thanks so much for joining us here on Spectrum News. Today is the first day of spring, Thursday, March 20th. President Donald Trump is ready to carry out one of his most controversial campaign promises, the dismantling of the Department of Education. Shutting down the department entirely would require an act of Congress. But the president says he will direct the department's secretary to take the steps needed to, quote, return education authority to the states. Most of the department's work involves distributing grants and loans to institutions and individuals. In the fiscal year 2024, the net cost of the department's operation was more than $218 billion. Of that money, $33 billion went to Pell Grants for those in higher education. More than $34 billion was distributed to disadvantaged students across the country. $5.5 billion was spent on school improvement efforts. Spectrum's Angie Gonzalez breaks down the upcoming executive action from Washington.
President Donald Trump has made no secret of his plans for the Department of Education, calling it wasteful and vowing to send decision-making back to the states. His administration has already taken steps to gut the agency, nearly cutting its workforce in half.
I'd like it to be closed immediately.
But when reports first surfaced earlier this month, the president would sign an executive order to begin dismantling the agency, the White House press secretary called it fake news. Now it appears President Trump is ready to pull the plug. A White House official says he'll sign an executive order later today to close the department. The question is how he'll do it. The Secretary of Education confirmed a little more than a week ago closing the agency would require congressional action.
We'd like to make sure that we are presenting a plan that I think our senators could get on board with and our Congress could get on board with that would have a better functioning Department of Education.
Critics of the move have been preparing for this moment. A plan to gut the department was laid out in the Heritage Foundation's conservative playbook, Project 2025. Wednesday night, the president of the American Federation of Teachers told the Trump administration, "See you in court." Others are challenging the notion having states handle the department's money managing duties will solve anything.
State Department of Education has had funding cut after funding cut after funding cut.
Politico reports several Republican governors, including Greg Abbott of Texas, Ron DeSantis of Florida, and Mike DeWine of Ohio, are expected to attend today's signing. In Washington, Angie Gonzalez, Spectrum News.
Dozens of Palestinians across Gaza are dead following Israeli airstrikes. Israel says its troops are advancing in Gaza for the first time since the ceasefire took hold in January, seizing part of a corridor separating the northern third of the territory from the south. Spectrum News reporter Brianna Foos has the story.
It's a scene that's all too familiar across Gaza.
We climbed up the stairs, only to hear the voices of my 2 young daughters screaming, "Dad, come help us."
This latest round of Israeli airstrikes hit homes across northern Gaza and off the coast. Before the strikes, flyers were dropped with a dire warning: evacuate. The Israeli military said it had launched targeted ground activities, partially recapturing a key area in the territory, adding it wants to expand what it calls a security perimeter separating Gaza and Israel and create a partial buffer zone between the Gaza Strip's north and south. The resumed fighting has left remaining hostages' families.
We are terrified. We are very sad by the fact that the government of Israel, together with Hamas and the United States and Qatar and everyone who's involved, could not make it to the second phase of the deal.
Well, that deal, of course, was shattered on Tuesday. The Gaza Health Ministry says more than 400 Palestinians, mostly women and children, were killed. It's left Palestinians wondering if they're alone.
Over 20 minutes before we managed to save the girls. Where's the civil defense team? Where's the people that will rescue and save people?
Meantime, Israel's defense minister warned on Wednesday that the residents of Gaza will, quote, pay the full price if Israeli hostages are not returned and Hamas remains able to govern the Strip.
Hamas must understand that the rules of the game have changed.
So far, the Israeli military has brought just 8 living hostages back to Israel out of the 251 taken by Hamas and its allies on October 7th, 2023. Brianna Foos, Spectrum News.
For the second time in a row, the Federal Reserve is keeping interest rates steady. Analysts say yesterday's decision shows central bankers are waiting to see how the Trump administration's policy changes will play a factor in the U.S. economy. Those adjustments include heavy tariffs, mass deportations, and the downsizing of the federal workforce. Many economists have predicted there will be at least one rate cut before the end of the year. Time for a quick check of the forecast. After a long and cold winter, relief is finally in sight. Today is the first day of spring. Meteorologist Ramel Carpenter joins us now. Ramel, is it safe to put our winter coats away?
Not just yet. If you live in the Midwest, we do have some much colder weather to look forward to, but as we get into the weekend, we are going to be warming up pretty nicely. But let's talk about spring equinox. It started this morning at 5:01, and this is when the northern hemisphere starts to shift more towards the sun, and in the southern hemisphere shifting away from it, so fall officially begins in the southern hemisphere. But the sun's rays are shining directly on the equator for the next couple months until we get to that summer solstice in June. Let's talk about temperatures today. We're going to be in the 40s up in Chicago with some snowfall in the forecast to start the day off, feeling like spring though across the Carolinas and down towards the Sunshine State, of course. But as we transition into our Friday, we are going to see a bit of a cool down briefly before our temperatures start to warm up for the weekend. And our temperatures this weekend are going to be running about 10+ degrees above the average in parts of the Central Plains, Bree.
All right, Ramel, thank you very much. A new chapter in the Battle of the Branches, how the White House is doubling down on its fight with the courts. That's coming up right here on Spectrum News.
Weather can be beautiful, inconvenient, and at times powerful. And it affects everything we do. At Spectrum News Plus, our weather experts update you with the information and the context you need so you can better plan your day. And we do it every 10 minutes. We're the calm in the storm. Weather on the Ones on Spectrum News Plus, exclusively on Spectrum. And get your weather anytime on the Spectrum News app.
I really am in the middle of nowhere. Every day is different. Chores, come on, homeschooling, and then I fit in the rug business. I just got a new batch of rugs that I'd love to show you. I have a website, and a lot of what I do is sharing my home life. Mommy's leaving. Reliable, high-speed internet is the foundation of our business. Spectrum was great. They went out of their way to make sure that I was okay and I was taken care of. Shoo! And that's the awesomeness of having Spectrum.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/therightseat.
Even the mighty might not see it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test to know where you stand and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. Be your own hero on smartphones everywhere at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your weather on the One's forecast. It's the first day of spring in the northern hemisphere. Spring equinox officially began this morning at 5:01. And what this basically means is that the northern hemisphere is going to be facing closer to the sun and the southern hemisphere facing away from it, which is why fall officially begins in the southern hemisphere. But the sun's rays are going to be shining directly on the equator, hence the equinox for the next couple months until we reach that summer solstice in June. But was not feeling anything like spring yesterday for the final day of winter. It was certainly feeling like it across Nebraska. This is some video from the Nebraska State Patrol in Lexington. We had some gusts over 55+ miles per hour at times in parts of the upper Midwest, with some heavy snowfall at times as well, leading to around half a foot to a little over a foot of snowfall across the Iowa and Nebraska region. That's where most of the snowfall fell over the last 24 hours or so, and it certainly was a winter-like day for the final day yesterday. But as we transition into the day on Thursday, we're going to see some snowfall still sticking around in parts of the Great Lakes region, especially around the Chicago region and up into the Great Lakes as well, but not nearly as heavy as it was on our Wednesday. Also have a frontal system associated with this as well, continuing to work its way into the Ohio Valley, brought some strong to severe thunderstorms in parts of the upper Midwest yesterday as well, so it's been quite the 24 hours in this part of the country, but thankfully we will have some relief from that as we get towards this upcoming weekend. So as we get into the next 24, 48 hours, we're going to see those snow showers work its way into parts of the Great Lakes, and that frontal system pushing into the East Coast, bringing some rain in the forecast this afternoon and evening. Don't expect a lot of rainfall from this system by any means, and then we're drying out just in time for Friday with a good deal of sunshine arriving in the forecast. I think by the time we get into the afternoon and evening hours, though, we could also see some gusts well over 35+ miles per hour, especially down towards portions of the Carolinas and into the Great Lakes region as well. But temperatures the next couple of days will be feeling like spring as we reach the end of this week, but another cool down is on the way. We'll talk about that coming up in 10 minutes.
Here's a look at what you need to know this morning. President Donald Trump is expected to sign an executive order today to begin the process of dismantling the Department of Education. Shutting down the department entirely would require an act of Congress. Israeli forces launch a limited ground operation to retake a key corridor separating northern and southern Gaza. The attacks have killed dozens, according to local hospitals. And March Madness officially begins today. Teams battling for a chance to play in the national championship game on April 7th. And that's a look at what you need to know this morning. President Donald Trump and Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke for the first time yesterday since their tense White House meeting nearly 3 weeks ago. The phone call follows the president's call with Russian President Vladimir Putin Tuesday, all in an effort to broker a peace agreement. Our Cassie Semyon has more from Washington.
President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke by phone for an hour Wednesday. By all accounts, a more productive conversation than their tense back-and-forth Oval Office exchange in late February.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now.
President Trump described Wednesday's conversation as a very good phone call about trying to end Russia's war in Ukraine.
The leaders agreed Ukraine and America will continue working together to bring about a real end to the war, and that lasting peace under President Trump's leadership can be achieved.
Zelensky described the call as positive, substantive, and frank. He said Ukraine is ready for a fair peace deal, but drew a line in the sand.
For us, the red line is the recognition of the Ukrainian temporarily occupied territories as Russian. We will not go for it.
The one-hour call on Wednesday follows a two-hour phone call Tuesday between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. In that call, Putin rejected the proposed 30-day ceasefire endorsed by Ukraine and the U.S. Instead, Putin agreed to a month-long halt on attacks on energy infrastructure in Ukraine. Later Tuesday, Russian missiles hit a medical facility in northeast Ukraine. No injuries were reported, but Ukraine said about 150 patients had to be evacuated. One analyst says Zelensky and Putin are both trying to influence President Trump as he tries to make good on a campaign promise, boasting of being able to bring the war in Ukraine to a quick end.
What we have now, in effect, is a competition or rivalry between Kiev and Moscow to persuade Trump that it's the other side that is responsible for preventing Trump from achieving his goal of ending the war.
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz will head to Saudi Arabia in the coming days, working to expand that limited ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. At the White House, Cassie Simeon, Spectrum News.
The Trump administration continuing its attacks on the federal judiciary. Some of its latest remarks accuse judges of, quote, egregious abuse and the gravest assault on democracy. The conflict escalating after a series of rulings blocking several controversial Trump administration policies, including a transgender military ban. Here's national political reporter Taylor Popolars with the latest from the White House.
The Trump White House is now accusing judges of engaging in lawfare against the president.
The judges in this country are acting erroneously. We have judges who are acting as partisan activists from the bench.
Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on Wednesday singled out U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, who ordered the administration to stop flights of deportees to El Salvador under a 1798 law. Leavitt accused him of egregious abuse. And Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller posted Wednesday that when a federal judge rules against the administration, it is the gravest assault on democracy. It must and will end. All this a day after President Donald Trump called for Boasberg to be impeached.
It certainly isn't normal in the sense that it's what we've seen regularly, but I'm not sure it's not such a sharp departure as much as it is to me just an increased reliance on it.
The attacks on the judiciary follow several legal setbacks for the president. On Tuesday, one judge called the dismantling of the U.S. Agency for International Development unconstitutional, and another stopped the president's ban on transgender people serving in the military. And then there was Boasberg's ruling over the weekend blocking the deportation flights. After President Trump called for his impeachment, Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts took the rare step of issuing a statement Tuesday that said it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. Former Justice Stephen Breyer told CNN on Wednesday he supported what Roberts said.
He's trying to explain to the people of this country how the legal system works and how it doesn't work. It doesn't work by impeaching a judge because you don't like his decision.
The crescendo of attacks on the judges by the White House has raised fears that the president will begin defying judicial orders, triggering a constitutional crisis. On Tuesday evening, he said this to Fox News.
I never did defy a court order.
And you wouldn't in the future?
No, you can't do that. However, we have bad judges. We have very bad judges.
Echoing Trump in that Fox interview, Leavitt insisted the administration will comply with any court orders, but they'll continue to fight each of them in court. Reporting at the White House, Taylor Popolars, Spectrum News.
After more than a month in the hospital, Pope Francis is no longer using a ventilator mask to help him breathe. In the latest update from the Vatican, it was said the leader of the Catholic Church had transitioned off assisted breathing. Since recovering from double pneumonia, the Pope had been receiving non-invasive ventilation. In recent weeks, he had only needed it for sleep. The Vatican says the pneumonia is now under control. However, the possibility of him needing ventilation again in the near future was not entirely ruled out. Round of 64 in this year's NCAA basketball tournament begins today. Just ahead, we bring you to Providence, Rhode Island, where friends, family, and fans alike are excited for the games to begin.
Spectrum News Plus. News from a new perspective, dedicated to refreshing storytelling and empowering communities across the nation. With balanced reporting, providing real context and in-depth coverage 24 hours a day.
Here's a look at your forecast across the country.
Local stories, connecting communities. We are Spectrum News Plus. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
Starting a business is hard. You have to stay connected at all times.
As we've been growing the studio, Spectrum's been there every step of the way. I'm always able to make the phone call that I need. I'm able to shoot that text message or that email. Every vital piece of equipment that we have here uses Spectrum.
Fast, reliable internet, starting at $40 a month, backed by the Spectrum commitment to keep your business connected.
Food isn't just fuel to live, it's fuel to grow. My family relied on public assistance to help provide meals for us. These meals fueled my involvement in theater and the arts as a child, which fostered my love for acting. The Feeding America network of food banks helps millions of people put food on the table. When people are fed, futures are nourished. Join the movement to end hunger, and together we can open endless possibilities for people to thrive. Visit feedingamerica.org/actnow.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff, like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Weather on the Ones forecast. We're getting close to the weekend, and it's the first one of spring. But for the final day of winter across the upper Midwest, we had a lot going on across this part of the country. We had some periods of heavy rainfall and some severe thunderstorms, adding up to around an inch and a half of rainfall across Illinois and portions of Indiana as well. And this is very much needed given how dry it's been over the last several weeks. But as far as the storm reports go, we had a few reports of some tornadoes across Illinois and mostly damaging wind reports across Illinois, Indiana, into portions of Kentucky as well. The National Weather Service teams will be out to survey some of that damage that was reported in portions of central and northern Illinois, but thankfully not seeing this type of severe weather threat that we had over this past weekend. And this is all associated with the same storm system that's brought heavy snow and blizzard-like conditions across portions of Iowa, Nebraska, and to Kansas as well. Certainly has been quite the active 24 hours with some cold weather and some severe thunderstorms into the Great Lakes region as well. And you'll notice the lack of wind alerts that we are dealing with over the course of the day today. Still have some wind advisories in place across the Great Lakes into portions of the Appalachian Mountains in Virginia and into North Carolina as well. Still could see some gusts over 35 miles per hour, but not nearly as windy as it was on our Wednesday, with those gusts reaching over 60 plus miles per hour. We do keep a risk for increase for some fire danger in the northern plains and into portions of the Rockies and down through Louisiana and eastern Texas as well, given how dry it's been and some brief breezy conditions could easily spark some brush fires, and we have been dealing with some of those over the last couple of days. Thankfully, should see some better conditions for containment as we transition into the end of the week. So temperatures today, though, going to be below the average for some, into the low 50s in St. Louis and Kansas City after spending the afternoon in the upper 70s, about 10 plus degrees above the average for this time of year. So we're going to be briefly cooler to close out the week. Highs will be in the upper 70s on the warm side of that approaching front down in Raleigh, upper 50s in Atlanta, and we're going to be in the upper 70s, low 80s across the Sunshine State as well. Carrying over into our Friday, though, we are going to see cooler temperatures start to take shape, widespread low to middle 60s across the lower 48 and down into the southern plains, warming back up into the low 80s in San Antonio. But as we get into this upcoming weekend, I mentioned we are going to see briefly warmer temperatures start to take shape, and you'll see that with the departure from normal. Across Kansas City, temperatures will be running about 10 plus degrees above the average. Same case for the southern plains, and we'll see those temperatures start to rise heading into the weekend across the southeast as well.
The American Kennel Club is naming the French Bulldog as the most popular dog breed for the third straight year. The organization announced the ranking earlier this week. They also named the Frenchie as the top dog breed of 2024, followed by the Labrador Retriever, Golden Retriever, German Shepherd, and the Poodle. According to the AKC, more people are choosing the Frenchie for their compact size, which makes them suitable for city living. The NCAA Division I men's basketball tournament kicks off with first-round action today. Our Cam Jandro was inside the Amica Mutual Pavilion in Rhode Island to catch up with fans before their teams hit the hardwood this week.
March Madness returns to Providence, Rhode Island. It's the first time in 9 years the city has hosted what is arguably the world's most iconic basketball tournament. We're going to see teams from all across the country in the next couple of days, including Kansas, Clemson, High Point University, as well as St. John's University. Traveling with them to the Northeast, though, are their fans who are over the moon about seeing their teams in the big dance.
Oh, it's amazing. I always appreciate, these moments and when they come. So since I've been little, just wanting to come and watch these games like this or whatever. So it's been a big surprise.
I actually don't root for any team really. I just really enjoy. So I'm an NBA fan. Okay. So I just like to see these guys before they actually go to the NBA.
Teams playing in Rhode Island this week took part in a public shoot-around, and while some may not have their favorite team in the tournament or they're playing in another part of the country, they're just excited to be part of the championship atmosphere.
I'm excited to come to some great teams like Purdue, Arkansas is coming down. Gonna watch them practice a little bit later. I'm just excited for some good basketball coming up.
High Point University was among the teams practicing Wednesday, and one player had some very special guests in the stands.
Number 4 is my boyfriend, so here to support him. We are so excited. We are so proud of them. We're here to root them on, and we're just so excited to see them for the first time go to the champion and win it all.
Because it's historical. It's never been done by this school before, and so we wanted to make sure we were a part of it and cheer our team on and let them know that we support all their hard work throughout the year.
High Point and Purdue will tip things off at 12:40 on Thursday, kicking off the tournament here in Providence. I'm Cam Jandro, Spectrum News.
Fun fact, I actually graduated college in that arena. And you can always stay connected with us here at Spectrum News by getting your national and local headlines on the go. Just download the free Spectrum News app. It's available in the App Store and on Google Play. I'm Bree Driscoll. Thanks so much for watching. Your Spectrum News in 90 is coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
I tell my son, I love you every single day. I
My dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious moment.
It's game time at the arena, and 20,000 fans are looking for a win. With an ultra-high-speed network and seamless Wi-Fi, fans can get in the door fast and share the game's best moments in real time. And with Spectrum Business committed to keeping them connected 100% of the time, they won't miss a second of the action. A secure, reliable connection from Spectrum Business means the fan experience is a guaranteed win.
Sometimes in life, in order to move forward, it helps to look back. To learn from the pioneers and trailblazers.
To gain inspiration from those who came before us.
To show us what it means to act with empathy and to show that love has no labels.
Join WWE and Love Has No Labels throughout the year in celebrating people from all communities and heritages.
Because when love has no labels, that's a love we can all fight for.
Women are bad with money. That's what the world's been saying for centuries. But now, we've got something to say.
Save it. It's time to save ourselves by saving our money.
Until we're no longer 80% more likely than men to live in poverty in retirement.
Save it. The falsehoods, the feelings of fault.
Then, the funds. Learn how to save for your retirement at WeSaySaveIt.org.